What is up, everybody? In this video, I want to introduce you guys to the new series that I want to do here on YouTube. Basically, I want to build a full stack application here that is going to be somewhat of a clone of like an issue tracker, like Linear or Jira, more like Linear than like Jira, but yeah, it's going to be a full stack app, and we're going to have all the types of features that you would expect from a production grade issue tracking app like Linear, and we're just going to build it from the ground up. So what I basically have so far is a scaffolded out project here using Aspire as kind of like a local orchestrator so that we can run all the different bits and pieces of this application locally, simply by clicking the run button. And that's going to handle all the tying the pieces together, tying the different services together, managing the database and stuff like that. But really, we're going to be building this as we go. So we'll see what all changes, if anything. But yeah, basically we'll jump into what I have scaffolded out so far. It's going to be a .NET 10 REST API backend, probably using Entity Framework for the ORM. This is AI. I had AI generate some of this stuff. So we'll see if it ends up making it in or not, because we're just going to build this out and see what we get. Postgres database. And then on the front end, just like a React SPA application using Vite and TanStack router is the plan. And then auth, we're going to be using a open source identity and access management service called Keycloak. And that's also going to be run through Aspire. And yeah, so let's go ahead and kind of jump into code to see what I have so far. So we have the Vite application in this front end folder, and then we have our .NET solution that contains these projects. So if I can switch to the solution view if I want to, and that here is the more traditional view that you would see when working in a .NET project. And we have 4 projects in here so far, which is just our API service. This will be the backend, which is still just the scaffolded out project here, the template that has the weather forecast endpoint, and then we have our Aspire projects here, which is the app host. This is the thing that's kind of linking them all together. So we have this API service variable here that is adding the API project and also adding a health check. And then we're also adding the add Vite app, which is called the front end, and that's going to wait for the API service to run. And so we only have 2 separate services here, the front end and our API backend currently, but this is stitching those 2 things together. And so if I go ahead and run the app host here, wait for that to spin up, you can see that I have the API was running, starting up, and the front end was in that waiting state for it to start. And this front end resource comes with like an extra task where it runs an npm install that comes out of the box with this add Vite app. So first runs npm install, and then it will run the npm run dev specifying a port. And currently, I believe it is just running on a random port every time. So I can come over here, and you can see that this is just the basic React Vite template that you get when you create a React Vite project. And then we have our API service running over here, which you should be able to navigate to our slash. Let me just grab it from here. And we get our API call, our JSON data back from that / weather forecast endpoint. Okay, so that's it. It's just a basic endpoint and then our basic Aspire setup. And let's go ahead and jump into the kind of the data model that I've scaffolded out here using AI. So basically, we're making a clone of Linear. That's the idea, just to give us something to work off of. I'm not trying to build a big SaaS business or anything like that, so I'm just going to recreate something that already exists for fun and for the learning experience. So I have this SitRep data model markdown file here, which specifies some conventions, and it's basically building a data model around the Linear app. And so if you're familiar with Linear, which I am barely familiar with, I've just jumped into it a little bit as always, trying to figure out what project I should do. But they have like this concept of workspaces and teams and team member, obviously, and we have these different workflows and labels, and then obviously the issue relation, issue labels, comments, reactions, attachments, activities, projects, project member, milestones, yada, yada, yada. So I did a pretty comprehensive job about creating this data model here. So let's go ahead. It also gave me this entity relationship diagram. This is like a mermaid diagram viewer. Okay, look at this. This is pretty sweet. So this is the mermaid diagram, which I have not even opened up until now. Cool. So this might come in handy as we're just looking around. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So what is the next thing that I want to add? I think the next thing to add is basically adding like the front door. So we need to set up authentication or our user management platform. So using Keycloak. And the way I want to do that, I'm not super familiar with Keycloak, so I'm going to be kind of learning along the way, is I just want to give AI a chance to just create that and integrate it, and then we can ask questions about AI to see, if this is the right way of doing it, and then we'll jump in, make edits where needed, and test and test and test. So let's go ahead and come over here, and I'm basically going to just prompt AI to run this. I have this application and it is a front end with an API service and it's orchestrated by Aspire. I want to add Keycloak as my auth solution, also orchestrated by Aspire. Can you please examine the project and add Aspire to this project? Okay, there's obviously some grammar issues, but I think the AI should be able to figure it out. So we'll run that and let's just see where that gets us. Okay, so Claude is now asking for my input, and basically it has a clear picture. It's going to add the hosting package for Keycloak to the app host in Aspire, and it's going to add the service to the app host orchestration, and then create a Realm import configuration for dev. Okay, so then we're going to add the JWT bear auth to the API service. That sounds reasonable, and let's go ahead and allow it to do that. No, I don't like that. Let's go ahead and use release packages. So what I was trying to do there is just use like its normal container support using Docker, and it was going to manually spin up some Keycloak containers because those the Keycloak packages are in pre-release, and so I told it, let's go ahead and just use the pre-release packages. That's fine. It's going to be evolving. Okay, so now this is added here, and let's go ahead and inspect what it did. So it's using the builder.add Keycloak, which is coming from that new package, so we can actually look at the app host project file, and as you can see, we have this preview package, Aspire hosting Keycloak. And then in our file, we're adding it with a data volume, and then we're importing this realm, which should have also been created. If we look at our file system, it's probably in here. So go back over here, Keycloak configuration, here's the file. So we will explore what that is in a second, but yeah, so now it references the Keycloak, and then it's going to wait for Keycloak. The API needs to wait for Keycloak to start before the API will start. And then we also reference Keycloak with our front-end app as well. So then if we look at the realm, this is going to be created when it spins up Keycloak in our Docker container. And this is some configuration that it's doing out of the box. So we have some roles, some clients, and the front end, so the back end and the front end. And then it looks like it created some users here. So that's cool. Let's go ahead and just run this and see what happens. We didn't look at the changes to the backend. Let's actually come over here, look at our API service. First, look at what's changed. We added the JWT bearer authentication package. And then over here, we now require authorization on our super secret, super secure weather forecast endpoint. We are adding a connection string for Keycloak, which is going to reference the, I believe that's called the logical name. This is the same thing that is registered in the app host Keycloak. So Aspire can figure out and assign appropriate connection strings, and we don't have to worry about it, which makes the developer experience super nice when we're just running this full application locally. We don't have to mess around with connection strings and stuff like that. So we're adding the bearer authentication scheme with the authority being Keycloak. Okay. We'll come back to the authorization and authentication more in depth, make sure it's hardened, make sure it's what we want. But for now, at least it's in place. And let's jump back over to see if this is all running. So now this is up and running, and I believe we can access this either from maybe those users that were created, or there should be like a admin password in here. So admin with this guy. Come over here, admin, sign in. Okay, so here is the default master realm, and then we have the SitRep realm, which was created from this Keycloak configuration, the realm import. So if we go over to that JSON file, realm is SitRep, and that's exactly what we are seeing, SitRep here. And then we have some clients. Let's see, what do I see here? SitRep API, SitRep front end, SitRep API, SitRep front end, They are OpenID Connect. Cool. And again, I don't know a whole lot about Keycloak, so we're going to figure out exactly what's going on. But if I run this up, you can see that I have a Keycloak instance running here in Docker. The Redis is something else that I just have set up to run when my machine starts here. So that is not related to what we were doing on this project, although we'll probably add Redis at some point. Okay, so we've added that, and I think we might stop at that point. So again, just to recap what we're doing here, we're going to build a linear clone just like this, where we have obviously our users, we exist as part of a workspace, we have projects, we have views, we have members and teams, we have different projects and stuff like this. And we are recreating that using .NET as our backend and React front end. And we're just laying the foundation work right now. And we're orchestrating all the different pieces using Aspire to give us a great developer experience. We've added Aspire, a project is running. Next video, we will probably set up a database, get that up and running so that we can probably just create a login page and have that, integrate that login page with Keycloak and our backend so that we can start creating workspaces and users and really have a workspace and a user set specifically for our development as we're developing out this application to be able to see data in the database and to help us build this as we go. So thank you for watching. I know we didn't do a whole lot in this video, but we gotta really lay the groundwork before we start doing some more rapid development of features. So hope to see you in the next video.